few of them. I use moo.com. They are a little bit more expensive, but I always get comments on how nice my business cards feel, and it does really help. You're gonna need signage with pricing on it. You're gonna need some kind of banner or sign with your name or a studio name. You gotta tell people who you are. Food and water for you. Please do this. Please either get food and water beforehand or get you a friend or loved one to bring you food and water. It's very important. You won't remember to do it, but you really do have to eat and drink. And then you're probably gonna need some kind of card reader. I make probably anywhere from half to 3/4 of my sales with card. The fees are honestly not that bad. Like, people often will like have an upcharge for credit card fees. I think Squares are like 2.4%. At a really good market, I'm paying them like maybe 2% of my total. It's very, very worth it for the convenience of being able to take card, because the vast majority of people want to pay like that. And then finally, if you're getting real fancy, you might want to start a little newsletter sign-up sheet, a way to kind of capture people more fully and like send out stuff that you are doing. You might need or want event insurance. There is a company called ACT Insurance, ACT, Artists, Crafters, and Tradesmen, and they offer per event policies that you can get. ACT.
ACT.
T.
Yes, T.
Okay, I already got it up. Thank you.
ACT like hacked. Yeah, they offer both yearly insurance, which is worth it for me because I do so many events, and like per event insurance, which some like Applefest, for example, require you to have. So that's where you can go if you need that. You will probably need to get a sales tax certificate from New York State. It's very easy. Weirdly enough, New York State bureaucracy is not known for being easy, but getting a sales tax certificate and the ability to send them money, weirdly, is easy.
Capitalism.
I know, can't imagine why that would be. And then the last three things, a scannable Venmo code. If you don't take Venmo, you also should. A lot of people would like to pay with Venmo, and you can get a little QR code that people can just scan on their phones so that they can pay you without having to type anything in. And then you're gonna want to track your inventory, which I know is bad because none of us got into this business to do math. I certainly did not. But tracking my inventory lets me see what I'm selling, what is selling well, how much I am selling. Like, it lets me track my sales, which is super, super important. You need to have those numbers on hand. And it lets me know what I need to print more of. Like, after a show when I'm exhausted and don't want to think, I can just look at my inventory tracking sheet and be able to know exactly what I need to reorder. And then I like pegboards or like a wire grid for hanging art if you're gonna need that. So that's the stuff that you kind of like need. You need at least the very basics to get set up, but you can slowly accrue this stuff over time. You don't have to have all of this at once, because it can feel, again, like quite overwhelming if you're like, oh God, I have to do all of these things before I get set up. No, you need a table, a thing to be underneath, stuff to sell, and like some kind of display, and that's it. Now, actually selling stuff, the important part, really. How do you choose what to sell? We make probably a lot of stuff. Probably you're not going to want to sell every single thing you make. Maybe you do. But if you're like me, like, you are painting stuff and trying to figure out which of these do I actually want to bring to my booth versus like what's just playing around. So this is going to change depending on the artist, but here are some trends that I have noticed from my own work. Interesting stuff sells. This is great news because probably you are all making interesting stuff. But what I mean by that is, like, I used to be really insecure about my art looking pretty different. It's very saturated. It's nature work that is very saturated, which you don't see a lot of. But the main thing that I hear from people is like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. This is so cool. And what that means for you is, like, whatever you're making is already interesting. So you don't need to try to follow any kind of trend. You don't need to copy what another artist is doing, even if they seem to be selling well, because truly what people are interested in is novelty and like what you specifically have to say about your work. So make work that you are excited about, and the pieces that you bring to markets should be the pieces that you are excited about. A fun anecdote is like, you might think that, say you're doing Apple Fest. Oh, I should bring Apple themed work to Apple Fest. No. People do not give a shit about Apple themed artwork at Apple Fest. They want to eat apples, they want to eat apple cider donuts and drink apple cider, but they're not looking for like, oh, I need to go and buy an apple painting at Apple Fest, which like I totally thought that they would. At every themed festival I've ever been to, it does say low battery up there.
I'm worried about that.
I am too. Let's see if we can make it.
Oh.
Nope, still not plugged in. Oh, it's because it's fully not plugged in. Okay, well, we're gonna keep going until Robin comes back, and then I will yell at her to get us. Robin, your computer's dying. We need a power cord. Thank you. I'm gonna keep talking. We have 10%.
I'm not ready.
So, following, selling interesting work, specificity and story also sell. So choose work that you made for a reason. It's fine if you like painted a still life because you wanted to try painting a still life and then you sell that. That's a story. You get there, someone's like, why did you paint this? And you're like, oh, I've always been interested in still lives and I wanted to see if I could do it. That's great. I paint specific local critters, and folks around here recognize them because Cornell is here, and people really like that. And by and large, the people who are coming to art fairs and craft fairs, like they're looking for arts, they're looking for objects, but they're looking for a story. They want to come away from that market being like, wow, I met this really cool creator who like makes these amazing pots, and she makes them with leaves that she finds in her yard, and this is one of them. And that is a story that they will tell to everybody around them, and that is the experience that they are looking for. So you need to be able to talk about your work. You need to be able to tell people, why did you make this? Why should they care about it? What is cool about it? Why are you excited about it? And if you can do that, people will take that with them and be way more excited to buy it. And then for, actual like, oh God, I can't actually decide which things to like make prints of maybe, my thing is, can I imagine that piece of art on a wall or like in somebody's home? This seems obvious, but you'll see what I mean on the next slide. So like this, for example, is a lot of my picture book work. Now, this is slightly outdated because this work is now literally up in a gallery in Trumansburg, but I don't make prints of this kind of work. It is more aimed at the publishing world. It lives mostly online or like in my picture book themed gallery show, because I can't really see somebody looking at most of these pieces and being like, oh yeah, like that resonates with me on a deep level, even though I love these pieces. These are some of my best sellers at markets. You'll notice there's not a lot of humans in them. They're very colorful, and they're a little bit like, they're less focused on, this stuff is all about movement and story and narrative because that's what's important for picture books, where this is more like a beautiful art piece. It's a little bit simpler. There's still a lot of narrative in them, but it's not the dominant thing. And of course there is some overlap. These are all in my picture book portfolio, and I also sell prints of all of these, so it's not, a hard and fast rule. But generally speaking, you're just gonna want to make sure that you can like picture it in someone's home for some reason. And if you're like trying to figure out what stuff to bring, that is a great metric to use. What to physically sell? Well, probably you're going to sell the thing that you make, whatever that is. I make gouache paintings, so I sell gouache paintings. But you should not limit yourself to just the thing that you make. Now again, this is more relevant for folks who are making paintings and then can make prints of them, but it can apply to other crafts as well, because you're going to want to vary your sizes, the type of object that you are making. You're probably not going to want to bring all vases or all spoons. You're going to want to bring like a thing in a medium, but many, many different variations of that thing. So for the artists among us, you can sell prints, you can sell cards. You can sell stickers or washi tape, which is a thing that you can just have made, which is very cool. You can put your art on pins or charms or bookmarks. All of those are little items that are very easy for people to grab. A friend of mine, Katie B, the person behind K-Berg Ceramics, if you've seen their work, they sell a lot of like really, really cool footed mugs and interesting vases, but they also sell a lot of very small wizards, like little tiny orb wizards. And you kind of need a smaller, cheaper item for people to be able to kind of impulse shop. And it contextualizes the rest of your work. By having a small, cheap thing, the bigger, more expensive things kind of make more sense in people's heads. And also, if you have small stuff like stickers, it tends to appeal to kids more. It tends to make kids run and be like, Mom, look at this cool thing. Can I have it? It happens a lot. And then of course, on the opposite end, you can sell big stuff. Again, if you're a fine artist, you can put your work on fabric goods. You can make fabric goods. You could make a quilt if you wanted and sell that. You can put your art on wallpaper, on posters. You can make a big giant object like a lamp maybe. Like having a big hero piece like that can be really, really useful for drawing people in. Obviously, there are endless more things that you can sell, but this is a small overview of like what you can put your art on. I mostly sell prints. I sell a lot of original art, but I sell mostly prints. And for the folks among us who might want to make prints, there are lots of options for how you can do that. I use a process called giclée. They are archival, light fast, it has a very wide range of colors. It is the most expensive option, but for me I find that it's worth it because it's the closest to my original work that I can get. We have a local giclée printer. They are up at by Schripheimer Mall. And I use a place called giclée today that's in Pennsylvania. They're great. Again, they're expensive, but these prints, at least for me, are super worth it. If you are not as concerned about quality, like, you know, the super, super high quality, which most people frankly don't notice the quality of my prints. It's really just for me because I'm a perfectionist. So if you're like, I don't really care about that, I want to get them for cheaper, you can get really nice and interesting like laser prints made on nice paper, and that is perfectly fine. There's a place called Cat Print that makes really, really nice high quality laser prints. A lot of artists who I know who go to conventions use Cat Print for their work. And then you can also, if you want, buy a home ink printer. I know Canon makes some really nice printers that you can print your own works at home. It's a high upfront cost, but maybe more cost effective in the long run. It may or may not be archival. At some point, I might try to spring for my own ink printer, but I can't be bothered right now with maintaining ink levels and stuff. It sounds like a pain in the butt, so I'm not gonna do that yet. And then this is again geared at print sizing, but I'm going to talk about general sizes of objects. So it's a really, really good idea to offer multiple sizes of a thing. And I don't mean like a thing that's this size and a thing that's this size. I mean like something very small, something very large, something in between. You can offer the same print in multiple sizes or restrict things to like one size as makes sense for the work. I kind of do both, but I'm moving towards just one print, one size, because I think that makes more sense to my brain. I offer 5x7, 8x10, 11x14, and 16x20. Pretty wide range. The reason I do this, folks have different budgets, and a lot of times if they can't find anything cheap enough that suits their budget, they won't buy anything. That's especially relevant for us because we are a college town. There are a lot of students who are on a lot of very low budgets, and they can't always afford the really, really big, nice art, but they still want art to put in their homes. And so a small 5x7 print is a way for them to still take some of my art home without like completely breaking their budget for the week. 5x7 prints are a really big seller to the student population for that reason. And then also folks have different like wall and home space budgets, which I think is not as often talked about, but like one of the #1 things that I hear people debating when they are in my booth is, where am I going to put this? what size frame do I already have? Do I have space on my wall for this thing, or do I already have too much art? Oh, if it's a little 5x7, I guess I can fit it in this one little nook that doesn't yet have art. And so like, you can adapt to both people's monetary budgets and spatial budgets by offering different sizes, and therefore make a sale when you otherwise might not. And then I'm going to talk specifically about stickers, because I think that if you are a 2D artist of any kind, I think they are a very fun and easy thing to sell. Kids love them. I put them on my own water bottle because I like them so much. A lot of people do this. And I offer a lot of what I call weird stickers, which is clear stickers, glow-in-the-dark stickers, shiny stickers. I really like having different interesting finishes. I think it makes a better story, and I like to be really intentional about what I'm selling. I don't make any decisions just for the sake of having a sticker. I'm always like thinking through what serves this design best. So I think like this is an example of something that's like small, cheap, relatively easy to produce, that sells a lot. And I also get the added bonus of I've seen my stickers on people's water bottles and cars, weirdly, around town, and I get to be like, hey, that's mine, which is a very cool feeling.
Where do you have the stickers printed?
Yeah, that's what
Okay, so there was a whole thing with Sticker Mule where they went weirdly conservative, so don't use them. I use a place in Portland, Oregon called Sticker Ninja, and they are so nice. They're so nice. They send me little notes and put little smiley faces on all of my proofs. I let them do a lot of the like white ink layer stuff, so I don't have to set up my own files. I literally just upload PNGs and they do the white ink separation and the contour cutting themselves. They offer, I think the lowest order you can get is 25 of something, and they give their employees a 4-day work week and pay them a living wage, which is really nice. They're also the only website I've ever seen that sometimes will be like, sorry, we're not accepting new orders because our team is overwhelmed, come back tomorrow. They'll close the website, which is inconvenient for you, but I love it. It is a little inconvenient, but yeah, I love them so much. Sticker Ninja is great. Okay, and then of course, original work. You should definitely be selling your original work. And we're going to talk about specifically pricing in a little bit. So you're going to want to price your original work high, not lowball yourself, and you're going to want to let those pieces really draw folks in. I highly recommend, if you are selling original work, this is less relevant for folks who are working on canvas, but if you are working on paper at all, definitely frame your work. I think it makes it look much more intentional, it makes it look much higher end and much more worth the price. And you're not sending people home with homework, which is to go mat and frame the piece. I've only had one person ever ask me if they could like take the piece out of the frame so they could mat and frame it themselves. Most people really appreciate not having to do extra work when they bring a piece of yours home. And yeah, some of my best-selling things are like little tiny originals. I make them like 2x3 in tiny little frames from Michaels, and they sell for like $35, and people love them. And it's also very fun to paint very small paintings. Highly recommend. Okay. We already kind of covered this, but yeah, other stuff you can sell. You can sell cards. You can include envelopes. You can sell washi tape and charms and pins. You can sell home goods. You could get tea towels and fabric printed. And then, importantly, if you do any kind of other art thing, if you teach, if you run workshops, if you have a book coming out, for example, put a flyer at your booth and tell folks about them. I also teach gouache workshops, and the vast majority of my attendees have come from like somebody being like, wow, I wish I could learn how to do this at my booth, and me going, good news, you can. It works really, really well. You have a captive audience who's already really interested in your work. Like, use that to your advantage. So if you do any other kind of art thing at all, put that at your booth, let it be part of the conversation. It's super, super helpful. Okay, pricing, the big scary one. Things that you need to take into account when you're pricing. This is where we're going to get into like the marketing stuff that I learned. That again, I know We didn't get into this business to do numbers and spreadsheets. And I love you all dearly, and you're gonna have to maybe do a little bit of numbers and spreadsheets. I'm sorry, and I wouldn't say it unless I thought it was really, really useful. So, things that you should take into account, COGS. This stands for cost of goods sold. It includes all of your materials, including the actual price for the thing that you paid to make it. If it's a print, that is like the price that you paid to get that print printed. If it is a painting, it is the price of your canvas or your paper. I don't include things like paint because I cannot be bothered to try and break down like what that would mean, how much paint per painting or whatever. I know a lot of clay artists, like Katie also is just like, I just kind of set a flat rate for what I think clay is and just kind of use that. You don't need to get super granular with it, but have like a number in mind that kind of will make it at least a good placeholder. It also does need to include any extras that your customer gets, like a business card and the packaging that you use to wrap it up. That is part of cost of goods sold. For framed originals, it also includes your frame. So you're gonna wanna know what that is because that is going to inform your price. You wanna think about your market. We are in rural upstate New York, but in a relatively high cost of living area. So we're in a bit of a pricing middle ground. You're gonna wanna pay attention to the type of market that you're interested in. Like a street fair, like Applefest, is going to have a very different audience with a different budget than a juried fine art show like Clothesline in Rochester. People at Clothesline are interested in buying relatively expensive original pieces of work. People at Applefest are largely interested in stickers. It's very, very different. And then, of course, your other costs. This is gonna be your booth fee for being at the market, gas for travel. If you're staying overnight, this is gonna be like your hotel costs for staying there, food that you buy while you're at the market, and like your wages. You're doing this for money. You need to make sure that it's worth it and that you're getting paid for your time. You know, you need to feel like you're doing something useful and not just sitting in a money pit losing money. You should probably have a range of prices, including very high value originals, big pieces of work that are expensive. Put the rest of your prices into context. If I had, for example, a big $1,500 painting, the little 5x7 $200 painting seems reasonable when you're like, oh, that's how much a really big painting would cost. If the $200 painting was the most expensive thing in my booth, it probably wouldn't sell. A range of prices also gives people options, which again is always useful. Whatever you do, do not go too cheap. I promise you. It's gonna feel scary, maybe, to price your work high. Ask people you trust to help you price things. Pricing too cheaply turns people off. And I have seen this happen, and I have had this conversation with myself at markets. Because if you're selling an 8x10 print for $10, they are going to assume that you are inexperienced, that there's something weird about the print, that it's like cheaply made somehow. Like, people are gonna be like, why is this $10? And they might buy it, but they're not gonna be like, yeah, that was super worth it. It's not gonna feel like a deal. They're gonna feel a little suspicious. I have seen it again and again. It's fascinating. And like for original work particularly, where I can't as easily take into account things like cost of goods sold, I ask myself, what amount feels worth it for me not to have this in my house anymore? You know, what amount would feel worth it for somebody to walk away with this and me not feel a little bit resentful about it? You don't want to resent your own prices. That takes some time to calibrate. It's definitely not something that I had a good sense about when I started out. I think I'm honing in on it now, but like it's a very squishy thing, pricing. It's hard to nail down, especially for stuff that it's harder to understand like the cost that you put into it. So it's not easy to do. My prices are half based on cost of goods sold and booth fees and half based on vibes, to be honest. This is a screenshot of my like calculation spreadsheet from last year. I have actually finally had to bump my prices up, which is very upsetting because my printer got more expensive. I held off for like 2 years, but As you can see, I priced out at the time, this little bit that says print is the price per print that I paid to actually get it made. I had 2 levels of packaging. This involved just tissue paper, and this involved a compostable, like, clear sleeve to protect the work. And then each business card costs me, like, I think that's less than a cent. It's very cheap to produce. So then I like input all of those with, I sort of added a placeholder for like roughly what a travel market tends to cost me. And I calculated my profit margins for each of these things and like used those numbers to make sure that my prices were feeling worth it. Because again, like a $34 profit margin sounds like a lot, but you have to take into account things like your taxes and your mortgage and your internet and all of these other expenses. So you got to make sure that that number, that profit margin, is high enough that it feels worth it to you. And again, I had to bump my prices up because this base price here went up from my printer, and I was eating all of that cost for like 2 years because I felt bad. But don't be like me. Don't feel bad. Raise your prices. It's worth it. You're worth it. Okay, now we're going to talk some actual numbers, which is a little scary because I don't think we talk a lot about actual income as artists and with each other. So these are real actual numbers. This is my tracking spreadsheet from 2025. In 2025, I made $43,205.95 from markets. I did 18 of them. It was very tiring. I also illustrated 2 full picture books in that time, and I was very, very tired at the end of 2025. Probably some of you remember me talking about how tired I was. I also spent, as you can see, about $13,500 on various business things. That was booth fees, travel, supplies, printing costs, getting inventory, stuff like that. And then I have now done my taxes, and so I know that my actual expenses were much higher, about $25,000, because that includes things like internet and your cell phone for some reason, and part of my home office. So your actual business expenses are always going to be a little bit higher, like on the tax side of things, than the number that I use to calculate, for example, like how much money I made. Yeah, I don't really know how I did that. I was not expecting to make this much money, to be honest, and I am a little bit scared that I won't be able to replicate it this year because the economy is what it is. But we shall see. I'll show you how I choose the markets that are the most worth it and what kind of data goes into choosing those to hopefully help you do something similar. And hopefully it will be correct and it will hold true this year and I will not lose money. We'll see. So let's look at some numbers from Square. This is just card sales. I could not be bothered to like track all of my individual sales. So this is just card from January to July 2025. So in the graph is by dollar amount, and then this is like actual physical number of things sold. As you can see, prints made up about 70% of my income. Having that lower priced, like middle tier thing is so important for making money, because people are not always going to be willing to drop 200, 500, 1,000 on work, especially at an art fair or something like Apple Fest, where they're already spending a lot of money. They're probably budgeting for other stuff. They're probably not like going to a thing being like, I'm going to spend $800 today. You know, it's not really the market that you find at markets like that, except for the Ithaca Artist Market. That is the only one where people like seem to come being like, I'm going to spend $500, and we love those people, bless them. So yeah, having that like middle price tier of prints that's like $20 to $60, super important. You can see how much money it makes me having that option. And then you can also see the lower price thing, stickers, also makes up a pretty good chunk of my income. And then this little guy is like original work. This is original paintings. I illustrated a planting guide last year and was able to sell copies of that, and it was very popular. So the Wild Seed Guide made up a full 5.4% of my sales in that time. And then other includes things like washi tape, like smaller little one-off things that I also offer. So the interesting thing that I noticed when I crunched these numbers is you can see originals makes up like a pretty hefty chunk of what I made. But if you look at the number, that was only 25 of them versus 430 prints. So they're kind of like really punching above their weight. And I think the reason that they do that is because I have the prints to sort of contextualize things. I have the other things in my booth to draw people in. And then if they really love my work, they might actually be willing to spend $200 or $300 or memorably one time $500. I still don't understand why. She like ran up and was like, I have to have that. And I was like, oh, okay. She didn't even talk to me. It was wild. It happens once in a blue moon and I don't understand those people and I love them so much. So like, this really showed me that, at least for me and my business, I think leaning into these framed originals is going to be a really effective strategy for me. I'm obviously going to keep offering prints because, again, 70% of my income, but I think that those originals are really like, they're doing a lot for me. So I'm planning in 2026 to lean more into painting more of those and selling more of those because I think clearly it is worth it for me. And this is the kind of data that I highly recommend that you keep if you start doing this, because you can get that kind of insight about what is selling well, what people are resonating with, what maybe you can lean more into because it's really working for you, and what, like this little blue thing of washi tape, I'm probably not going to make more washi tape. I don't think it was worth it. It was fun, but I don't think it's worth it for me to keep making. Okay, so how do you make money? How do you do this? The important part of this, really. I think a huge part of it is merchandising. And this is, again, stuff that I learned in my marketing career. When you, as a customer, are at an art fair, there is so much to look at. It is so overwhelming to be at a craft fair. There are vendors everywhere. A lot of the time, these are happening in the summer or outdoors. You are hot. There are people around you. There are crying children. Your ice cream is melting. Like, you are competing for very, very fractured attention. And the leg up that we all have as artists is that we have a very strong sense of aesthetics. So what I want you to do is use that. You know what looks good. You are already making work that looks good. You want to make sure that your booth looks as good as your work. That is what is going to draw people in. Your setup is going to need to be scalable if you're doing a lot of markets. Indoor markets often give you about 8 feet by 6 feet, and that's usually like a 6-foot front and like 8 foot deep. Sometimes it's smaller than that, but like you'll have at least 6 feet of frontage usually. Outdoor ones most often ask you to have a 10 by 10 pop-up tent, which you're gonna need to make look full and inviting and not sparse and like you just rolled up late with 4 things to sell and just sort of put them on a table. It might work, but it probably won't. So how do you make it look full and inviting? You can hang things on grid walls, or you can get mesh like side panels for your tent and hang things there. You should add levels to your table with, you can see like little boards and boxes that you can put stuff on top of. It makes it look way more full and way more interesting. And then you can also have like a standalone print bin, maybe standing away from your table to hold other work and to give people like room to sort of browse and have a nice time. And then the other half of that is you don't want to overwhelm visually in your booth. And this is something that I have actually been working on because, like, as you could see, there's a lot going on in this picture. And I have heard people say like, oh, there's so much to look at. And I kind of want to edit my booth a little bit this year to make it a little bit less visually overwhelming because it can be a lot. So yeah, you don't want to sell too many different kinds of things. You don't want to overwhelm people. This doesn't mean like things your art is on or forms of one medium. You can sell as many different things made out of clay as you want to. But what you don't want to do is be a potter who also rolls up offering to read people tarot and have vintage clothes and maybe somebody crocheted something that they want to sell at your booth and maybe you made a candle one time and want to sell that. You don't want to do that. It, again, is overwhelming. It makes it look messy. It's confusing and folks aren't easily able to identify like who you are as an artist. You need to make it super, super clear with your booth setup visually who you are and what kind of aesthetic you have without even having to say anything. And that's what good merchandising can do for you. So stay focused. Don't let somebody be like, oh, I crocheted this hat, can I just sell it at your booth? No, they can't. It's your booth. So, how do you merchandise well? Pick a color palette for your booth stuff. This doesn't mean like everything has to be white. Mine is mostly white and cream with peach and pastel color accents, and then a lot of like light natural wood. And that is the aesthetic that I have found for my booth. I try to keep all of my display objects, tablecloths, boxes, print display bins in that world so that it all looks visually cohesive and like it belongs to the same booth. And then also you have to make sure that your specific work looks good on that set of colors. Don't overcrowd things. Leave enough room for folks' eyes to rest. Trust your aesthetic instincts. Again, you know what you're doing here. Make sure that you have business cards out for people to take as well as like handing them out with your work. People will often, especially if they're doing the rounds at a booth, they'll take business cards to remind them which ones they want to come back to. And they will come back to you if they can be like, oh yeah, that cool artist was selling this thing, I gotta go check them out before I leave. And then do not make folks ask you to pick things up or hold things. Honestly, you see a lot on probably Instagram, like people trying to get attention, being like, this person stole this thing from my booth. I have never one time had that happen to me. Like nailing things down, making them hard to access, making them hard to pick up is only going to hurt your sales. And I have actual physical data about this. I used to have just like one single display print on a tabletop, and then I had my actual prints that I was selling like stocked in the back. So people would say like, oh, can I get this one, and point to the one that they were interested in. And my sales increased so much when I started sleeving, backing, and putting out every single thing I was selling, because people do this really weird and cute thing where they pick up a thing, and once it's in their hands, they get sort of possessive of it. Like, they will pick it up and sort of like, I've seen people like stroke it a little bit, they'll like hold it close to them, and they like physically fully get attached to it as they're browsing the rest of your booth, and it becomes way harder to put it back down if they have like held on to it for a while. And it's not, I don't think it's manipulative to do this. I think you're just like offering people the chance to like envision this object in their life or in their home, and it works way better than people having to like get your attention and feel awkward and be like, can I have this one? People don't like doing stuff like that. They like to be left largely alone on their own terms to pick up their own things and make their own decisions. So make it easy for people to pick up your work if you can, if it's not too fragile to do that. Booth vibes, the fun part. So what I did is I literally made a Pinterest board. This is it. This background is the Pinterest board. And I collected like booth display ideas and vibes from other people that I liked. And I used that to guide my decisions and figure out my branding. So you're gonna think about what looks nice with your work. Do you want like a dark, moody backdrop to make all of your colors pop? Do you want clean white to make it feel like very upscale and fancy? And also think about what will act as an extension of your voice and reinforce the impression that folks are getting from you. And I'll show you some examples of what that might mean. These two artists are very graphic illustrators. You can see they use a lot of like a flat, more pastel colors. They use a lot of graphic, bold shapes. They're busy but clean. And they've used a lot of like white wood and colors pulled from their work in each of their booths to make it feel related. This person has some cute little plant pots that match a lot of their color palette. This person has customized their signs to be cute shapes, also shapes that you can kind of see in their work. So they're really like pulling inspiration from the vibe that their work gives and pulling it into their booth. These are two of my favorite makers, Mustard Beetle and Camp Mustelid. They're wonderful. These are also both illustrators, but they are much more like nature focused. They do a lot of plants, a lot of animals, And you can see that they have used more natural grounded colors, these olives, mustard, sort of khaki, dark green, all of which again is in their work and which like feels very at home with the kind of work that they are selling. This would not look as good if they had black tablecloths. It wouldn't look as related or as intentional.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
I notice you sell under your name,
yes.
and these two people are using branded name of some kind. Have you noticed anything at art markets where one is better than the other?
Not really. It honestly seems to be personal preference. I started selling under my name because I'm also trying to be a picture book illustrator, and I wanted like that recognition to just be like, this is Julian Plum, the artist. I think that if your name is like super long and complicated, it can be helpful to literally ask me how I know this. Julian Plum is my pen name. I picked it because my last name is Jomek, which is not easy to say or remember. So like if you have a complicated last name or a name that you don't want people to be like referring to you as all the time, it can be helpful to either pick an artist name, a pen name like I did, or assign a little title like Mustard Beetle or Camp Mustelid.
Thank you.
Yeah, just depends on vibes. I don't think it makes a sales difference, except for like if you're trying to make people say your very long and complicated German Italian former last name that was 13 letters long. That's why I changed it. These people have very clean white setups. Like you can see that this is like some very soft pastel-y watercolor. The art itself has a lot of white space and is very soothing. So they have made their booth also have a lot of white space and be very soothing. There's no like brightly colored pink signage here. There's some little lace, which really goes with this like soft, flowy aesthetic. And then this person has gone for what I call the sort of like Apple Store aesthetic of artists. Like she's gone for a very fancy, it looks high end, lots and lots of white space, very, very pale colors that suits her, again, like very pale, sort of sophisticated looking work. But you don't have to just be pale. You could also be like these folks. These two booths obviously are going for a more sort of like fantasy, like goth-y, maybe like Ren Fair adjacent-y kind of look. And their booths reflect that. There's like this cool lace tablecloth. All of their display stuff is black, which makes sense because there's a lot of black in their work. They have this cool little like feathery decoration-y thing that I really like. They have some fun flowers, and then this person has gone full on and like made a nature themed, as if you're reaching into a tree to find their art, which I think is super cool. I don't think that would work well with my work, but it works really well for this person. You can see how well that matches their aesthetic. So I think that this is legitimately one of the most important things that you can do for yourself at markets. You don't have to build yourself a tree for people to reach into and take your work out of, but your booth absolutely has to speak in the same language with the same voice that you are using in your work. Your booth and your work cannot be at odds with each other. It will be confusing, and when things are confusing, people just walk past them. They just don't engage. They're already so overwhelmed, and there are so many things competing for their attention that you need to say with everything that you have who you are so that they can understand at a glance roughly what you're offering. It makes it so much easier to let your booth do some of the selling for you. And now we're going to do a section called Learn from My Suffering, which is do not do some of the things that I have done. So, how do you find festivals and markets? Where on earth do you look for these things that is not frantic Googling and desperately asking your other cooler artist friends where they are selling at? Legitimately, go to there. Go to the local events that are around you. Ask a friendly seeming vendor how they found this one and what other ones they're doing. That is literally how I got into markets here. My friend Bridget organized the original series of little Beltane markets that were happening at Buffalo Street Books. I went to the first one maybe 2 weeks after we moved here and was like, this is so cool. How did you find out about this? And she was like, oh, I organized it. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. I've been wanting to do stuff like this. And she was like, let me tell you about the next 5 markets I'm doing. People, unless they're weird, and then you don't want to talk to them, are gonna be like, they're so ready to share this kind of stuff. Like, I have not encountered literally any kind of like weird gatekeeping among artists. Generally speaking, everyone I've talked to has been like, oh my god, these are the markets I was doing, these are the next ones that are coming up, like this is the booth fee, I think you'll do super well there. People are so happy to help. Take advantage of that. If it's the dead of winter and nothing is happening and you don't have anything to go to, you can also just like look up craft fair plus your location of interest. Maybe that's Ithaca. I looked up craft fairs upstate New York because I was willing to travel about 2.5 hours. That's a really great way to find ones that are happening. And then once you find them, just go to whatever website or Instagram of the organizer and see whatever little button or link or anything that says call for artists. That is what generally you'll be looking for. And then you can also follow local events on Instagram. Instagram is basically the way that I have seen that events will post calls for artists. Like by and large, it is on Instagram. Sometimes it happens on Facebook, but I don't use Facebook, so I don't know about that. But the ones that I do, they are basically all on Instagram, and they all post vendor applications open or looking for artists, like when they do that. And then, because Instagram has an algorithm that like somewhat works most of the time, you'll start getting sort of served other calls for artists. And I have found out about other festivals that way because Instagram was like, oh, you like art fairs, do you? And then if there's already a local festival that you know and love, like Applefest, look up the name of it plus something like the words vendor application, and that will often like direct you straight to their site. So with some targeted Googling and asking your friends, you can put together a list of the fairs that seem interesting to you. Now, this one is going to be the one where I'm going to get a little real and a little vulnerable. This is always the question of like, when people are in your booth, how do you talk to them? What do you say? What if you don't like talking to people? What if you prefer being in your studio making art and you've been sort of dragged out here because you want to make money, but you don't actually want to speak to anyone and you're an introvert? So I am, number one, neurodivergent. I'm autistic. I have a difficult time sometimes reading social cues. As much as I like talking to you all, I have a pretty limited social battery, and I can kind of like mask and turn it up for several hours at a time, but then I get pretty tired. It's not easy to maintain the level of energy that I need to at markets. So I've kind of developed a way of surviving, especially like those 3-day markets like Applefest, which are just always going to be exhausting. There's no way around it. You're just going to be a wreck at the end of it, like no matter what. So thankfully, most people are really not looking for a super strong sales pitch right out of the gate. In fact, they will be actively turned off by it. I am even uncomfortable when like at some of the more, usually some of the like bigger fairs, like vendors will be near me like, I do this, like calling out to the people passing by. Like I even find it uncomfortable, and I think probably most people who are at these things find it uncomfortable. You do not need to be doing that. Maybe it's worth it for them. I think it's weird. Let folks wander into your booth. You know, they will come in, and when they do, just kind of greet them casually. Be like, oh, good morning, nice to see you. Sometimes I throw in a compliment if someone is like wearing a particularly fun cardigan. I'll be like, wow, I love your shirt. Or like, wow, what a cool look. You've brought such a good vibe into my booth. And then, unless they start talking to you right away, you can just leave them alone while they browse. Let them have a few seconds, take some time. You don't have to be hovering, you don't have to be looking or jumping in with a script. You can like let them kind of look around for a little bit, and then if they pick up a piece, like say I have this one that is a garden full of poisonous things. So if somebody picks that piece up, I'm like, oh, actually everything in that piece is poisonous. And that starts a little conversation about it. And then people are like, oh my God, what are all the things? You're like, oh, that's so cool. Or memorably, one time someone was like, ugh, and put it down. Not my people, I guess. It's only happened one time. Those people think it's cool. And it's like little things like that, like giving them a moment to look around, see what you're all about, and then jumping in with a little bit of information is a great way to, one, save you some energy, and two, like make it a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more natural and less like salesy. Because really all you're doing in that moment is talking about your work. You're just saying like, oh, I spent so long on that piece, or oh, I tried out this new glaze color and it didn't turn out how I expected, but it's super cool. Like if you look at this thing here, it opens up that conversation about your work that again, people are interested in and that will make you sales because people want to know those things without you going full on sales mode, which is exhausting. Some other little tricks, stand or be in a very high chair. I know you want to sit, but standing, my spouse and I have done so many A/B tests in our booth, like they help me a lot, where I test how many people come in and engage when I am sitting versus when I am standing, and it is a noticeable difference, and I'm so mad about it. Like, God, I wish I could sit, but standing makes a real difference. You just seem easier to talk to, I guess. I don't know what it is. I wish it wasn't true. Like I said, like compliment people's outfits, like do a little conversation starter like you're just greeting somebody, and then smile. You gotta look friendly and approachable. Don't be looking at your phone. Don't sit out of sight somewhere where people can't talk to you. People, like, it's already kind of an awkward thing buying at a market, and customers feel that too. So anything that you do to make yourself less approachable and make it more awkward for them will turn them off and make it less likely that you'll sell something.
At markets, like when it's like slow or like people are coming in, fading out, but it's not like constant, like, do you have any, like to not be on your phone and to feel like present, like is like drawing or like it's like, I need something for my hands so I'm not like.
If you are able to do your craft at your booth, that is like the one thing that you can do that's not like being present and looking at people that will work for you. And the thing is, you do still have to like look up occasionally. Like you can't get into that like arty flow state where you're just totally ignoring everything. But yes, and that I've seen that start conversations before, and I'm a little jealous that it's hard for me to do that at my booth, because my setup is full of paint. So I wish that I could. But yeah, if you can do some sort of craft when it's slow, that is a great way to still look like you're an artist, you're here, you're doing cool stuff without turning people off.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
This is my favorite subject because I've been watching people for like 30 years, and a lot of people at the craft fair, at the festival were sitting like this.
Yeah.
And just scowling at people, and they didn't have any visitors because they look like they might yell.
Yeah. If you look mad at people and like you don't want them to come into your booth, they'll think you're mad at them and that they shouldn't come into your booth. Like, you know, I think it's a nice balance of like you can't get pushy. You really can't like make people feel uncomfortable or pressured to buy things. I don't think it works. I think it's probably uncomfortable for a lot of us to do that, and it's uncomfortable for people to be on the receiving end of it. So you don't have to be hovering, overbearing, like, oh God, please buy this. Let me tell you everything about it. Let me give you a discount. You just have to be present and friendly and as genuinely interested in people as you can be, and be willing to talk about yourself and your work. Why are you making this? What's interesting about that piece? What's interesting about today? Do you like this festival? What an interesting drink you have. Where did you get it? Like all of those just like little normal conversation starters. I, as an autistic person, have collected them like Pokemon cards and I use them, and it really works and makes things so much less weird. I think it really, really helps.
Have you tested standing at like the front corner versus the back and moving around the space, or are you pretty much set up behind a table?
I'm behind a table. I will report back on that because I'm actually modifying my booth setup this year to accommodate more original art, so I'll probably be behind a table less. But generally, I do think like standing in a back-ish corner or back-ish area, not up front, makes it easier for people to kind of wander in without feeling like they have to say hi to you. Okay. You want to make it really easy for them and not weird. And like staring at them can make it kind of weird. So yeah, things to say about your work. This was the hardest piece for me. I don't want y'all to suffer. You can talk about the medium that you use, what you find interesting about it, whatever it is. You can talk about the subject material. Why are you referencing these specific things? Why are you painting these plants? Why are you painting these people? Why are you sculpting that specific guy? Why you make artwork, why you got into this. This is easy for me because I'm a picture book illustrator and people find that really fascinating. That's very nice. But like, yeah, why are you doing this? Why are you suffering in the 90-degree heat in your 10 by 10 tent to sell your work? You can also talk about what else you're working on right now. Oh, back in the studio, I have this other cool piece. It's shaping up really interestingly. It's got all these cool mushrooms in it. What made you make a specific piece, or what's going on in that piece, like the poison garden? I also have like a nasturtium one that a friend of mine commissioned, and I get to be like, she asked me if I would be willing to paint nasturtiums, and I gesture to my booth, and I'm like, obviously I was willing to do that. And then of course, like what your studio and work process is like. People are super interested in how you made this. How long does it take you to make a thing? How are you making the creative decisions that you're making? Like again, people genuinely want to know these things for the most part. And you'll get occasionally a person who comes in and just does not look up at you and does not try to make eye contact. And that, I have found, is your cue to not say anything. If they don't look at you, they don't want to talk to you. If they look up at you, or if they pause and like kind of look up, that's your cue that they are looking for a little bit more information about your work. But I have had people come in, stare like this the whole time, browse for like 10 full minutes, and then buy 5 things. And I don't understand those people. They are like, they're kids to me. I love them. I don't know how they make the decisions they make without talking to me, but I'm thankful that they do. And I just leave them alone to do their thing. Like, you can tell if someone's radiating an aura of like, I don't want to be bothered. Like, do not bother them, and they will be so grateful. Okay, other mistakes that I've made. Wear comfy shoes. I spent 2 years wearing these. These have barely any sole. They are very flat. My feet hurt so bad because again, you're standing the whole time. So get comfy shoes with good support, good arch support, squishy on the bottom. You're gonna need them. Bring a friend or loved one or appoint one to come and visit you to help you take bathroom breaks. It can be so hard to leave your booth, especially because you're like, oh God, what if somebody comes by while I'm gone and they want to buy something and then I lose $1,000, or somebody steals something. If you have no other choice, you can generally ask a booth neighbor to watch your stuff for a little bit. I do that all the time. Again, people at these things are so friendly and they will always be willing to just like keep an eye on your stuff. But if you can bring somebody with you, or have someone like come to, you know, bring you lunch in the middle of the day and give you a bathroom break while they watch the booth, that's a really good idea. It can also give you a little bit of a break to be like, okay, 4 more hours, we can do this. Keep inventory. If you don't have Square, or you have transactions in Venmo or cash, write down how much, like what you sold and how much you sold it for. Do this, do this, do this. It will help you so much. For a reason that I'm going to talk about right now, which is like keep a log of your total sales as well as the booth fee, because that is how you decide whether a market is worth it. Unfortunately, except for like gathering intel from other artists, there's really not a great way to know whether a show is going to be good for you or bad for you until you do it. There's a huge element of chance. You'll also see a lot of people complaining about like, oh, I got a bad booth placement and it screwed me over and nobody bought anything, or like something like that. I have had the worst booth placements possible and still made money. I have had great booth placements and made no money. I really don't think that has a ton to do with it. It might make like a $100 to $200 difference in like a, you know, couple $1,000 market, but it is not gonna make or break you. Don't stress about that. What you want to know is, how much did you pay for that market? How much did you make at that market? And basically, like, does that feel worth it to you to do again? That is why I keep such strong inventory and numbers, is to figure that out, because I don't know. Based on vibes, so many markets that you'd think would be so good for me have been so terrible, and so many markets that I thought this was gonna be awful have been like real winners. I can't predict even now, except for like what I call, for me specifically, the gay people quotient, which is how many gay people are gonna be there. If there's lots, I will make money. Because my art appeals to gay people, because I'm gay. I think that's it. Like, you know, if you are an artist who, I don't know, paints a lot of sailboats and there's like a sailing festival in a harbor, you're probably going to want to try to do that because you're going to be thematically appropriate and people who care about that stuff are going to be at that market.
But not apples.
I was just gonna say,
Not-
well, what about apples?
Well, again, this is the thing. If your whole thing is boats, but it's not like that specific kind of boat, you know, that is what will make it work. If you're just like a gouache artist and you happened to paint an apple, everyone's gonna ignore that apple at Apple Fest. I don't know why. It's the worst. But yeah, like, so what you're gonna do to decide whether a market is worth it is you're gonna give it a shot, you're gonna keep really, really good numbers, and then if you made enough money versus your booth fee and your time and effort that you're like, hell yeah, I'm gonna do that again, then you do that market again the next year. And if it was shit, and you, for example, sat in the 90-degree heat for 3 days, made $600 because the organizers double booked you with a different festival, you don't do that one again.
That sounds personal.
It was bad. It was the worst market I've ever done. Even the food vendors were complaining, which is how you know it's bad, because the food vendors always make money. If the food vendors are angry, it's a bad market. Yeah, this is the spreadsheet I use. Again, this is the literal actual spreadsheet. This is how I keep track. I note down the booth fee, other costs. I make little notes to myself about whether I would do it again. I track my application status because sometimes like they want you to apply like 7 months in advance. And you'll get your acceptance like 3 months in advance and you have to know whether or not you have to do anything. And then I track my sales, and then I track my profit, which is my sales minus these two columns put together. And then this little column here, year over year, tells me, did I do this market last year? And if I did, how much more money did I make this year last year, or how much less money did I make this year last year?